as I have MP York, who wishes to take the floor on the topic of the draft budget 2025. MP York, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. Good afternoon to my esteemed colleagues and to those listening and viewing online. Madam Chair, through you, I'd like to start off with some positivity today. And I would like to thank the coalition for finally submitting their coalition accord. It was something that I've been requesting from the time I swore in, and I felt it wasn't being paid much attention. And thankfully, after a conversation with the new MPs, Waver and La Vega, we finally received the coalition accord. So thank you for that. After perusing the accord, I had some questions, but after speaking with some MPs of the coalition, they answered them, and thank you for submitting that. Now, with that being said, I will be asking some questions today, and I'm not going ministry for ministry. I'm going to try to, but a lot of things are intertwined with one another, so please bear with me and pay attention, please. So, one thing that, I grew up, was taught as I grew up, or growing up in St Maarten, was at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what title we carry, what job we do, how much money we have in the bank, how much assets we have. At the end of the day, all we have is our name and our word. Your word is not just a promise, but also things that you say. They can come back to haunt you sometimes. So as I speak about the budget today, I will be taking a step back to see what was said and a step forward to see what is done, seeing that is only fair. I posed a lot of questions during the Central Committee meeting, questions that I won't be copy-pasting and asking again, but I will be delving deeper into the answers that were given. Some answers which I received yesterday evening. I'll start off with the Ministry of Finance. Minister Gums, your presentation was quite clear. However, I still didn't get an indication of, it seems like you're planning to plan, right? Through you, Madam Chair. Still getting used to it, don't worry, we'll get there. So through you, Madam Chair, it seems like the minister is still planning to plan, but I'm not seeing a clear vision, because a lot of the plans that the minister, through you, Madam Chair, alluded to, I'm not seeing it like, it's not time-based. It's like, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that, but I'm not getting a clear indication of when. I understand preliminary studies have to be done, but I'm not getting a clear indication. Will it be done in 2025? Will it roll over 2026? Because if the minister talks about tax reform, and then at the same time she says, okay, I think it should go down to 15%, I think everybody would want, like, hey, when is this going to happen? So things said, I think we need to add tentative timelines for people to get a better idea of what to expect. Especially in the CC, I refer to a lot of taxes that I would have expected to see in the presentation. I didn't see them. Maybe it's a plan for 2026 or 2027. I would like to know, seeing that maybe there are other things that needs to get done before the minister could get to those things. I would like to know on things like relief for the pensioners. When does the minister plan on putting that on her list? Is that something imminent? Is it something for 2026? Is that something that still has to be discussed within the coalition? Also, the minister mentioned retracting of outdated taxes. Now that's although it's just three words, I think a lot of people will be curious to what is the scope and what is the timeline, through you, Madam Chair, for these actions. I also, dating back to a prior meeting a couple of months ago, had a very good discussion, I would say, with the minister as it pertains to tax holidays. I would like to know, does the minister have any new requests since then, or any old requests that still is pending? But also, the minister said during the discussion that she agreed with me when I said we should also be looking out for the proverbial small man, and that she is open for all ideas and any ideas and willing to do what she has to do to get that done. I would like to know, since that budget amendment meeting a couple of months ago, what has the minister done as it pertains to that topic? So has the minister already instructed the policy department to look into it? Has the minister instructed a third party to look into it? Because I see in one of the, even Madam Chair herself asked the same question during the CC in writing, and alluded to the same things that I was pointing out, that the minister at that point said would be illegal, and that would be asking the requester of the tax holiday for some sort of corporate social responsibility, where if you ask for $2 million or guilders in a tax holiday, that a certain percentage of that needs to go to a particular project that's in the benefit of the community. At the time, I understood that such legislation does not exist to make it legal, but what are we doing to make it legal? Because we could sit here and you'll be here next year again and we still have that same reason, at which point I would be using the word excuse why we cannot ask and demand those things. So I would like to know, what has the minister done since that meeting 2 months ago, or almost 3 months ago, to take steps forward to make that a reality. Also, a couple of things that kind of made cause for concern where I am concerned. I feel I get more information about the plans or the ideas of this current government when I read things on Facebook, when I read the newspaper, when I read social media, and when we're in Parliament or when I watch the presentations given, I'm not seeing the same things reflected in those presentations, right? For example, if something like vehicle tax, adjustment in vehicle tax is announced, something that maybe in other places in the world is quite normal, so there's nothing wrong with the idea, but if something like that is announced in a country that we live in that is not used to it, some people will have a cause for concern because it was not explained. And I have an issue with particular ministers, because there's more than one in this coalition. Every time an idea comes to mind, before they do the due diligence, they're quick to post and say, hey, this coming. Hey, I'm going to do that. Hey, this coming. And, you know, a lot of times people accuse, especially people on this side of the room, of playing politics. We're in this setting. But in the CC, I gave the minister the podium because I read the article. I had my opinion about the article. And I said, you know what? Before I come here and I ridicule or critique the minister and the things said in the article, I said, you know what? Let me give her, through you, Madam Chair, the floor, and let her explain what she meant or what the minister meant with that article. And to my shock, the minister told me, through you, Madam Chair, she told us, there was no studies done, no research done, no assessments done. Basically, she told me she can't explain me what she meant with her article. Through you, Madam Chair. And although I understand, but I find that quite alarming, because if you're posting something and saying, hey, this is coming, and anyone has a question about it, and they can't even ask the minister what the minister meant by it, I think we jump in the gun when we are sharing ideas before having a plan. And speaking about having a plan, I saw 7 presentations yesterday, and I think with 2, max 3 presentations, I saw rode draad, as you would call it in Dutch, a little bit of cohesion, some synergy, but it would seem like most of the ministries are still functioning as separate islands from one another. And if there's one thing that was said in the past, and I do agree with it to some extent, is that in past governments, that was a thing, right? And I see some ministers understand that that's not the way to go, but I still see individualism in the plans and plan of actions in some ministers. Like, for example, if I were to use the presentation of the Honorable Prime Minister, in his presentation, he explained expenses, he explained income, and he kept it factual. I enjoyed it. Why? Because if I watch his presentation and I see what was in the budget, I could see the budget back in his presentation, but in a lot of presentations, I saw a lot of things that weren't in the budget from different ministries. And to me, that is a problem. Going back on what I mean when I say I'm seeing a lot of plans, but I'm not seeing any vision. I asked the Minister of Finance in the previous meeting through you, Madam Chair, I requested different years of the debt to GDP ratio. I was told that those answers, that information was not readily available. Debt to GDP percentages is basically before we take a loan, knowing if our economy can actually handle the loan. So now I'm seeing loans being taken, but if I ask a simple question like debt to GDP and that's not readily available, that's for me a cause for concern, legitimately. Because where are we going if we don't know where we are coming from when it pertains to those numbers? Same thing can be said about tax to GDP. How much taxes do we have compared to our GDP as a country? Because there are a lot of ideas for taxation, and I understand they are needed as it pertains to wage tax, tourist tax, vehicle tax, maybe even water tax eventually, I don't know. But they are needed, I understand that. But currently, St Maarten is at 27%, which is quite low, comparable to other countries. But I asked a simple question, what is the plan? Where do we want to end up? Where are we saying, like, this is the ceiling, and we don't want to go over that ceiling, right? If we say, hey, Holland is 39%, Holland is known as one of the most taxed countries in the world, Aruba is right under it at 35, our sweet spot is 36 or 34. I don't know. What is the plan? What is the vision? And then, you can make the different plans to take steps towards that vision. But if you're telling me you're going to do this tax, that tax, that tax, and when I ask a simple question, what is the goal and what is the vision that all these plans are attached to, is not available. So, Minister, I would still like to ask that question again. And even if you have to caucus and it takes a time and you don't even have the answer readily available in this meeting, I would like that answer in writing sometime in the near future. I would also like to ask through you, Madam Chair, I brought up concerns as it pertains to things that people are experiencing now, or for years, as it pertains to succession land, and the taxes for that, and the prices for that. Families are caught up in vicious cycles, and for numerous reasons why I would say people that look like me, or a lot of us in the room, can't use the assets that, with some help, they have access to. And therefore, certain levels of wealth are not achievable. Because a lot of people would have $100,000, $200,000 worth of land, and just because of the yellow tape that we have in our laws, they can't do anything when it comes to it. And then just because they can't pass the transfer tax and the this tax and the that tax to get a loan at the bank, they end up with zero. So what is this government going to do to assist or to change the laws, amend the laws, to make such things a bit more easier and accessible for our people? And when can we expect a plan for the new vehicle tax idea? I call it an idea because there's still a lot of things that needs to be done. What I have an issue with as well is when I asked the minister, not an issue, but I find it concerning, when I asked the minister, seeing that a vehicle tax is kind of stems farther away for not only her ministry, but also, for example, the Ministry of Romy as it pertains to vehicles, because maybe it has to do with his plan as it pertains to the traffic congestion. I asked the minister, did she, through you, Madam Chair, have any discussions? Did she caucus with the Minister of Romy? And the minister told me no. Okay, maybe she hasn't gotten around to it as yet. But then I asked the Minister of Romy the exact same question. And to that exact same question, the Minister of Romy told me, yes, the Minister of Finance spoke with me about it. And it's not a well as nietes, as they would say in Dutch, it's documented. So, you know, what's up with that? Somebody I want to say lying, fibbing, you know, in parliamentary lingo, did somebody misspeak? Because for a simple question like that, I get in two different answers, and that makes me question other things. But moving on. Ministry of Theatre. Minister, you're one of the ministers in the prior conversations and discussions and debates that I've praised, and I've gave a lot of kudos to, and they were always well received. And I have some kudos for you again, but I also have some critique. And I hope this time, now that if you end up getting critique from me, that is also well received, the same way the positivity was as well. Minister, the issue at the airport as it pertains to the COO appointment. I asked particular questions, and a lot of the answers were, I don't know, that have nothing to do with me. So I'll ask other questions. So is the minister, through you, Madam Chair, telling me, through by ways of the answers given, that the shareholder was not informed of the change in statutory director role? Also, is the minister saying that the articles of incorporation were changed without government knowing about a government-owned airport? The articles were changed that the CEO and the CFO are the only directors moving forward, or will be the only directors moving forward. Why was this changed, and who advocated for this change? I would like to have those answers, Minister, through you, Madam Chair. As well, I would like to commend the Minister on her deal with Soul Beach and bringing Soul Beach to St Maarten. She gave me the heads up about a month and change ago, and she told me that I'll keep it to yourself. And to see that it came to fruition, I would tell the Minister, good job. But I also have questions. I would like to know how much does this cost? Is this going to cost the island? I would like to know, the Minister alluded to having a deal or understanding with the French side as it pertains to a split. I would like to know what is the split, what is the French side paying, what is the Dutch side paying, what is the Dutch side responsible for. I would like to know how the money is being spent. And as well, does the Minister, through you, Madam Chair, have a deal readily available? As in, is it signed with the French side? Who is she in contact with on the friend side? And does she have a verbal agreement with the friend side? And if she does, I would like to see it. Influencers. A couple months ago, now before I go on to influencers, still about the Soul Beach, I would like to know, did the minister speak, or is the minister planning to caucus with the Minister of Romy as it pertains to the traffic situation or the pending traffic situation once all these visitors, I think I read about 3,000 to 4,000 visitors, that's about maybe 2,000 plus rentals on the road in the span of the 3-4 days, and maybe even the week, seeing our current traffic congestion issues. I would like to know what is the plan as it pertains to the traffic. Influencers. About a month or two ago, the tourism department had a campaign where I saw a couple of regional influencers were brought in and they did their thing. I would like to know what was the cost of this, as well what was the return on investment. So if you bring in influencer A, you pay influencer A 10, 20,000. I don't know what the numbers are, just in it for example purposes. You pay them 10 to 20,000. They do their job. How is that return being measured? Is it being measured in the sense of, hey, if this person is from Barbados, we got 3 extra charters that we coming in from Barbados because that was arranged. I don't know. How is the return of investment when it pertains to that being measured? Also, I would like to know what is the plan of the minister, through you, Madam Chair, to strengthen or increase or to start, I don't know what the current situation is, a working relationship as it pertains to tourism with the island of Anguilla. The reason for asking that, because some people might wonder, like, why does St Maarten want to team up with Anguilla? We much further than them in certain areas. Yes, they caught up a little bit while the airport was down, but we're still reasonably ahead. Why would we want to team up? Well, Anguilla has access to income that we don't have, being they were lucky enough to obtain a domain name of .ai, as St Maarten has .sx. And because of the correlation of what AI means as it pertains to artificial intelligence, one could only understand why a lot of people are buying into that domain for other purposes. And seeing the increase in artificial intelligence, that domain will be booming for the foreseeable future. Currently, Anguilla is obtaining revenues of $3 million per month. $1 million per month. And the projection, seeing that this government loves projections, the projection is that by this time next year, they will be at $6 million per month. Now, $6 million per month, one would say, okay, that's good money. But just to give an idea, $6 million per month is $72 million per year. Over a span of 10 years, that's $750 million. If you take it even further, $750 million is about 1.3 billion guilders. That's literally our total debt to Holland. Basically, if Anguilla wanted, they could pay it off in 10 years. That's crazy. Good for them. I'm not saying that we have to ask them to pay our debt, but I'm just giving you an example. I'm just explaining an example of how we cannot compete with that type of funds, because at the end of the day, if that's the raw cash that they're bringing in, imagine what they could add to it if they were to get a loan on that as collateral. So we can say we are ahead in the competition now, but if we don't do nothing, about 10 years, it could be a different, it could have a different outlook. Moving forward to the infamous marketplace. I think, just like the throughput fee, I think the minister is sick of answering questions about the marketplace by now. But I have a couple more, so bear with me, Minister. Minister, here I have a post taken on the 9th of September, nice post, where the picture of the groundbreaking, when the groundbreaking took place. Here we have the CEO of the Harbour, we have the Minister of Romy, the Madam Chair Lady, yes, and the Minister of TIAT. And then after the groundbreaking, the vendors had to move, everything was cordoned off, and I was wondering, what taking so long? And then I look at remember I always said the truth lays in the details, so I looked at it again, and I saw the Minister of TIAT and the Minister of Romy smiling ear to ear. And I see like the President of Parliament, they didn't look like she wanted to be there. And I was like, why would the President not want to be at such a joyous occasion? So I took off my MP hat and I put on my engineer hat, and I was like, hey, what's going on here? So then I looked up, I was like, the minister, through you, Madam Chair, changed the design. The minister skipped a step. She didn't retender the project, which, to each their own. I don't agree with it, but sometimes you got to do what you think you have to do. But I will add that it's not fair to those who didn't get to take part in the retender, but you got to do what you got to do sometimes. The marketplace took long to start, and I understand maybe the minister wanted to skip steps. No problem. I wouldn't have done it, but I understand where she was coming from, through you, Madam Chair. But one thing about when you're doing a tender, the relevant departments always make sure by the time the tender is awarded to whichever winner of the bid, that all the necessary paperwork are readily available for the construction to start. But if you skip steps, maybe something could slip through the cracks. So then I thought again, why would maybe Madam Chair you not want to be in that picture? And the only thing came to mind is that what was going on at that point was something illegal. What I mean by that, I would like to ask the good minister, do you at this current moment have a valid building permit for the marketplace? And if you do, what was the date of which it was stamped that it was granted? Because without a building permit, building cannot start. But what's even worse, if that is so, moving of the vendors to a position to where they're not really making that much money anymore because they don't have the traffic going there anymore, carting off the whole area, that creates a traffic situation because we don't have nowhere to walk. The sidewalk is too small for the intensity of pedestrians. It's a hazard. So I would like to know, does the minister have a building permit? Going back to finance for a bit, debt for climate change swap. Brilliant idea. I have an idea for the Prime Minister and for the Minister of Finance as well. And I think the Prime Minister will agree with me. Debt for climate swap is a good idea. Another idea to get some money is reparations. What is the current, and either the two ministers could answer, what is the current plan for reparations? I didn't see that in any of the presentations. And here I have another article from the 18th of December 2022 by the good Prime Minister himself, before he grew his Prime Minister beard, talking about reparations. And then he said, and I quote, "I find it quite unfortunate, however, not surprising, that our government is once again taking a passive and reactive approach instead of being proactive by conducting proper research and proposing sustainable ways for reparations." This was 2 years ago. So I would like to know, what is the proactive approach of the Prime Minister, seeing that he's been speaking about this for 2 years? And why was this not in his presentation? Also, one of the issues that is a hot topic And MP La Cruz touched on it lightly. Lightly is a light word, but the problem as it pertains to the ATM machines or the card machines in the supermarkets. I also disagree with the manner in which some merchants are going about it, and some supermarkets are going about it, and I don't agree with it. And I know the Minister of Finance, Madam Chair, also doesn't agree with it, because here she has an article, the 9th of October last year, condemning the merchants and supermarkets that does such. But Minister, although I also agree with you, and I find it a cardinal sin for those supermarkets that does such, there are always two sides of a story. Not saying that what is being said is not true, because it's 100% true, but now, rather than just simply condemning the supermarkets and the merchants, what are you doing, what is the minister doing through you, Madam Chair, to remedy the situation? Has the minister sat with the supermarkets or some prominent supermarket owners, or with the banks, although I know the minister does not run the banks? What is the minister doing? Because simply condemning doesn't fix the problem. So what is the minister doing to remedy the situation that this is not a problem moving forward anymore? Because it will get worse. Now, I have another query to the Minister of TIAT. Madam Chair, what's my time?
You still have quite some time, and if you skip reference to my facial expressions, then you'll have some even more time. You have like 58 minutes left.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. So I remember asking in the CC to the Minister of TIAT with questions pertaining to the business licenses, and MP Lewis touched on it again. But I want to look at it from a different perspective and repose the same questions. And those questions being, what was the backlog when you entered the ministry? How much business licenses has been signed since you entered the ministry? And what is the current backlog, right? The minister then said it's quite old school how they go about it still, in the sense of, to get that answer, everything has to be counted one by one by one. And that would take time. And because of the pending holidays at that time, I agreed, and I didn't further go into it. But seeing that the holidays are now past, I would like to have the answers to those questions. And seeing that on May the 13th, you had a quick scan of the ministry, I would think you have some indication from that quick scan what the answers were then. Because the reason I'm asking these questions, because we get a budget every year, a budget is spoken on every year, we see numbers, it's like, okay, why this one different than that, and why that one different than that, but we're not looking to where we can really get the meat of the problem to see where you can squeeze out some more money. So moving forward, Minister, this is a question you could expect every single budget debate, and even though he's not here, the Minister of Vromi can as well, as it pertains to building permits. So for the Minister of Vromi, hope somebody is listening for him, seeing that he's not here at the moment. But what is the current backlog as it pertains to building permits? How much building permits has been signed since being in office? And what was the backlog when he came in office? Through you, Madam Chair. Also, the minister had a very brash statement or opinion about exactly a year ago, where she said, and I quote, MP Heidegger sums up 2020-2024 governmental term of lack of vision and execution and gross incompetence. That's some fighting words. I will come back on this in a minute. In closing, as it pertains to the Ministry of TIAT, the cannabis legislation. The cannabis legislation, I asked the minister some questions, and I got some answers, and it brought even more questions to mind. Why? Because, as I said, before the CC, in December, the minister had a article saying basically the cannabis legislation is almost here. If I had to paraphrase what was in the article, we can practically smell it. Then, I'm paraphrasing with that. She didn't say that, just for the record. So, when I asked some questions in the CC, the minister told me that it was too early in the process as it pertains to legislation, and she couldn't answer those questions. Simple questions about how does one obtain a license, how many suppliers, real simple questions. And the answer was, it's too early in the process. Now, I turned around and I asked the former MP, the former minister, I said, hey, what's going on? Is this thing going to be done and then it's passed and we have nothing to say? He said, no, it has to come back. The now MP Utley said, no, it's something that has to come back to Parliament, so no worries, Parliament still has to decide. And I know that takes a process and that takes some time. But why, if there's no answers to be given as yet, the question is, why are there articles coming out saying that it's almost here? And why in the same week that I got the answer from the minister that basically there's no information to be given as yet because it's too early, in the same week the minister had an interview to where the same question about cannabis development industry, the cannabis industry development was posed, and the answer that the minister gave was, by early 2025, we plan to introduce cannabis tourism with strict regulations focusing on high-quality licensed concessions in tourist areas. You don't remember that interview, Minister? The interview is CowryMedia.com. Question and answer interview. So, judging by the answer of the minister, if the minister is already saying touristic areas and introducing cannabis tourism in early 2025, not legislation, but tourism, which means it's being executed. The answers that I'm being given, ministers, and the things that I'm seeing online is not adding up. I think even you now checking like, what's going on here? Yeah, so seeing that you're responsible to you, Madam Chair, why are the answers pertaining to one topic so inconsistent? Because if I ask a simple question like, how are the licenses going along? How many licenses? How do you obtain it? And you're already in this interview saying where these shops are going, I don't know if I'm being lied to, the people being lied to, the minister know what she's talking about, but I still don't have an answer to my question through you, Madam Chair. So I don't know if the minister misspoke to me, if the minister misspoke to the interviewer, but all I want, and all I think the people of St Maarten want, is just an answer to the question. So I will repose those questions. And I saw the minister stick something in her presentation, and I smiled when I saw it, because in December, during the CC, I was very upset with the minister, and I'm still kind of upset with the minister, as it pertains to her promise made in October to not ask someone to read a study, but that she said, the minister said to you, Madam Chair, she would look into the gambling addiction studies done in years past about the gambling problems on St. Maarten, because if there's a whole gaming board, if there's a whole new legislations coming, you have to know what the problem is before we go thinking about solutions. And this goes back to the same thing the minister accused the prior government of lack of vision, because how can we make a vision if we don't know what the problem is completely? And Minister Brugge of VSA, you have a lot to do with this as well. Why? Because a lot of times we sit down and think that all our ministries are, you're responsible for your own ministry. But what happens on the side of TIAT is going to have to be solved by you and VSA. because VSR solves problems. They don't really make problems. You agree with me, Minister? Okay. So, since the Minister of TEAT didn't go through the reports herself, I have some time, through you, Madam Chair, so I'm going to share some excerpts from those reports. A local study done 27 years ago, to be exact, reported the presence of disordered gambling among St Maarten residents. At the time in 1996, when compared to competitive islands such as Bahamas, Puerto Rico, Curacao, and Aruba, St Maarten had the highest resident-generated casino revenue of any island in the competitive set. The St Maarten casino industry reliance on resident-generated play was significant prior to Hurricane Lewis, but increased from $203 per person prior to the storm to $286 per person after the storm, a 32% increase. This is substantial in the wake of the fact that there was a 40% decline in overall casino revenue in the 12 months following the hurricane. So the casinos making less money overall, but the people that are going ended up spending more money. And I'm going to show you just now, Minister of VSR, where you come into play. Within a year, from 1994 to 1995, resident share in the gambling industry went from 25% to 55% after Hurricane Lewis. Presently, the findings reveal that St Maarten has 25 gambling licenses, 15 casinos, 7 lottery, and 3 online, of which 23 operational. And this report, it goes deep. These reports go deep. It goes everything from unemployment percentages amongst genders, breakdown percentages in levels of education, which ethnicities are higher at risk of disordered gambling, which types of jobs face increased risk. It's very extensive. They are very extensive. In March of 2023, the SED reported that lottery booths are of major concern for the islands since they are highly populated low-income areas with little to no supervision from the government. 75% of the country's lottery booths are placed in the top 3 most populated areas, namely being Lower Princess Quarter, Cul-de-Sac, and Cole Bay, consisting of significantly more people stemming from lower income communities than other districts. So basically they put the lotteries where people that are struggling are. When compared to Curacao, and here it comes, when compared to Curacao, an island of 171 square miles, with 2.1 lottery booths per square mile, St Maarten of 16 square miles, so averagely 10 times smaller than Curacao, with 361 lottery facilities, has 22.6 lottery opportunities per square mile. That's 11 times more lottery locations than Curacao. St Maarten surpasses St Kitts, Bahamas, Curacao, and Aruba in gambling license versus estimated population ratio. Vegas as well. To me, that's a damning stat. Through you, Madam Chair. So when I asked the minister in October, Minister, can you please go through these reports? And the minister told me yes. And to find out in December, she didn't. After 2 months. I understand the minister is busy. But how can it be when I asked the minister to go through something that is our people are suffering from, a major part of our people in society are suffering from, she doesn't have the time to do it, and okay, cool, no problem. But how is it since we closed Parliament and we reopened Parliament in less than a month, the minister could find the time to sit down with a group of owners to talk about the opening of a casino? How? I don't understand. To me, that's a question of priority. Because if you could make time to talk about opening of new casinos, whether the license being changed, or a new license being made, or the license being transferred, it's a question of priority. And why I keep mentioning the Minister of VSR, because Minister, this is something for you, through you, Madam Chair. When we have people with gambling addictions and gambling problems that want to seek help to remedy that problem, it only ends up costing St Maarten money. Because here, also in the reports, they have estimates and examples to where how much it would cost the country. Here I go. Costs range from $36,000 to $55,000 over a 4-year period per gambler. The healthcare expenditure included outpatient, inpatient, ER visits, and prescription drugs. If we considered only 20 gamblers in the society, so over the whole of St. Maarten, if we just take 20 gamblers that wants to seek help with this exact scenario, the healthcare expenditure would range between $750 and $1.1 million over a 4-year period per gambler. So if you count it up, 20 people, it's between $15 to $21 million just to fix the problem. And here we're talking about budget cuts. So we don't really have that money. So while we're on one end, when I say one end, in one ministry through you, Madam Chair, talking about doing things to increase tourism, more things for tourists to do, we are also costing the country on the other end money that we don't have. So what are we doing? So now, going back to you, Prime Minister, because it's the Messina II cabinet, through you, Madam Chair. On one end, we're initiating and researching all these new taxation ideas, etc., and rightfully so, they are needed. And we're going to bring in X amount of money, of extra funds, through one end, but we're pissing it out on the other end. Sorry for my English. We're giving it away on the other end. So netto, we're not even staying afloat. We're actually going the wrong direction. Because we're doing all of the work and spending all this research costs money too. All the execution that people we need to hire to execute some of the things that this government wants to execute costs money. And then when you look at it, the same set of people are being affected because now we're doing all of these extra taxation, so the small man still have to pay all this tax. And we just said it in the report, all these lottery booths are in the areas of the small man, so they have to pay all these taxes. And still, on the other end, those who suffer from this problem cost the country this type of money. So who wins in this situation other than those who own these licenses? So my question is, instead of lamenting on the scenario that's there and how it got to that moment, because I'm not blaming anybody for the fact that there's 300, almost 400 lottery facilities, not booths, facilities. I'm not lamenting on that. I'm not blaming anyone. So when I see here 23 times more lottery booths or lottery facilities than Curacao, I see chances for St Maarten to make money. So instead of looking at the problem, let's look at some solutions. So I would like to ask the minister, seeing that we have 23, every single one, seeing we have 23 more times or more opportunities to make use of this opportunity, I would like to know what is the minister going to do as it pertains to, instead of merely increasing the lottery fees, what is she going to do, what is the minister to you, Madam Chair, going to do about generating more revenues as it pertains to these lottery booths? Because right now, the minister explained it very well in the last CC. Currently, you don't pay per lottery booth, you pay per license. I stand to be corrected. How about changing legislation that you pay per booth? I mean, if a booth is making money in every area, we should be making money off of those booths as well. So I would like to know, what does the minister think? The Prime Minister could also chime in if he likes about that idea as it pertains to the island actually gaining from this current scenario. And about lottery fees, because that's the way casinos and stuff pay tax. That's their form of tax. I see lottery budget cuts left, right, and center. I think the Minister of Education, Youth, Culture, Sport, Madam Chair, reported something about almost 10 million. Was it 10 million, Minister? Averagely 10 million cuts. Through you, Madam Chair. Okay, got it. I'll just take a head nod. Thank you. About 10 million budget cuts for education, youth, culture, sport. There was also budget cuts for health. There were also budget cuts for justice, and we already know the issues that the teachers and the justice workers are now facing. So I would like to know all these cuts and all these plans for generating income. I would like to know what we are doing with the income that is owed to the country. Because on one end, the finance minister is speaking about retracting of old taxes. So I'd like to know as well, as I previously explained, what is the scope, so going back to which year, or starting at which year are we going to do it to help the manpower to bring it to more current state. But while we are hunting down people that owes taxes, while we are doing our best to retrieve the funds from the old taxes that are owed to the country, on the other end, from the small man, on the other end, we hear the school children talking that a minister, I don't know if it's the Minister of Finance or the Minister of Tourism, of THU, Madam Chair, granted or basically waived an enormous amount of outstanding lottery fees to a sum of some $10 million. So I would like to know, maybe the Minister of Finance could explain, did you give your blessing for the waiver of those lottery fees? Because it can't be that we are thinking of all of these extra and added taxation methods, et cetera, on one end, and we just give away, again, averagely $10 million in lottery fees. And to one individual, allegedly, $6 million in waived fees. Dollars, not guilders, dollars. We are a guilder economy. $6 million for one person. That person must have some serious influence. I guess if you're the major campaign sponsor for a certain top vote getter, I guess that was a hell of a return of investment. Moving on. The Minister of, what are we doing next? Minister of Justice. Minister, I enjoyed your presentation. It was quite factual. I don't have many questions for you, but seeing that you just entered the ministry and you're still doing your due diligence, I spoke to you about through you, Madam Chair, the rise in motorcycle accidents in December, to which you said, at the end of the day, you can't go too hard because there are also those who are well behaved on the road, and you can't straff those people as well. But since making that statement, Minister, through you, Madam Chair, there have been a sum of 5 deaths in less than a month. And aside from those deaths, there's the harassed behavior on the road. There are even, some people that when they're driving home at night and they see certain behaviors on the road, they themselves are now hesitant and scared. So you have on one end behavior, you have on the next end accidents, which at the end of the day cost lives and cost the country because one life lost and one life too much, and also the damage that brings with it, because currently insurances does not cover the straatmateriaal and all those things. So, Minister, I say all that to say, to you, Madam Chair, you're too quiet on the topic. I think I heard a lot of ideas thrown. Even the Prime Minister spoke on a zero-tolerance approach, and I agree with him. So I would like to know, instead of just telling you what I would like to see, I would like to hear, given the current climate, what is the ministry's plans moving forward as it pertains to the motorcycle behavior on the road. As well, cyberbullying. Currently, we have no legislation for that. Oh, there is some type of legislation, and I couldn't. MP Roseberg was explaining to me there is something, but at the same time, we don't have the legislation needed to attack that problem. It's a brewing problem because it's getting bigger and bigger by the day. In our recent, not recent, but the one before last Palatino visit, that was a topic of discussion, to where we saw how other countries are going about it and what they are doing. So in the Palatino, as a member of the Palatino committee, in one of those I was there for that meeting, MP Kotai, MP Roseberg, myself, and MP La Cruz will be submitting some ideas to you, maybe even an idea for amending of a law. So that will be coming, or you can expect that in the coming weeks and months. SG, time?
You ask for your time,
Yes,
MP?
yes.
36 minutes.
Great. So, speaking about things being intertwined, I print out some stuff today, for today, because, again, when we speak on our tourist product, we like to point fingers at the Minister of Theatre, and I don't find that 100% fair, because, again, to you, Madam Chair, a lot of ministries contribute to the final product in which we're proud of and in which our single-pillar economy strives on. So, MP La Cruz and a couple other MPs today, they touched on a very trending topic, that being garbage. And this is I would say I would address this to you, Madam Chair, to the Minister of ASR, the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Theatre, and the Minister of Vromi, because each ministry plays a hand in the final product. Here I have some pictures, because speaking about it on the floor of Parliament, I don't think does it justice. These pictures that I'm about to show, I'm showing right now, were taken on Monday morning. This is what St Maarten's tourist product is displaying to tourists bright and early on Monday morning. This is the product that we're showing. And most of these pictures are taken in the area of Colby, where at least half of our tourist maneuvers, I would say, back and forth, drive through. And we have a serious garbage problem, and I think it's very understated because it's quickly glossed over, but it has never been this bad. Never. Never. Not in the prior, with the prior government, not with the government before that, not with the government before that one. It has never been this bad. And to go in on one of the queries from a prior MP, the question was, what about the garbage bins? Are there more garbage bins being ordered? I have a different question. Why are we ordering the same garbage bins that after they come, we're still going to have issues with the garbage bins? Because these garbage bins, as you can see, especially the big blue ones, once they're full, they're also an environmental hazard. Wait. I think I have one. There's a good one right there. You can zoom in. You know what we're looking at. Yeah. This one right here. They have them all over. All over. Once it's full, we have rats, we have a stench, and once the wind hit it, if it's in the area of a school, we have a problem. So my question is, instead of just repeatedly ordering the same things to solve one problem, when are we going to think of ways to solve all the problems? Just through you, Madam Chair. Because we could order new garbage bins, but once they're full and they don't get emptied in time, it's another problem. And even once they're emptied and not cleaned, after a while, that also carries a scent with it, and with the high winds, it's a deplorable situation. So I would like to know, what are we going to do about the garbage situation? I know the question was posed to the minister about what the exact problem is, but I want to know what is the solution. Because a garbage hauler could have a potential problem, but what is the ministry doing to remedy the problem? Not pointing fingers at any garbage hauler or at the ministry, but I would like to know what is the plan of the ministry to assist the garbage haulers in this situation. If you can't assist, what's the solution? This as well. This is one of the local points. Hasn't been cut. This is what our tourists are seeing or trying to see when they are going through our beautiful country of St. Maarten. This is what they're sending back home and saying, this is what I looked at today. So my question is, please do not take it lightly. It is a serious problem because this is our tourism product and we're a single pillar economy. A next problem, and I would like to commend the Ministry of Economy for the initiative. I haven't seen it start yet. I haven't heard about it being started, but I heard murmurs about it being started. And that's a crackdown on illegal, what's the word? Garages. Yes, sorry. Thank you. Illegal garages. So what about any legal garages, Minister, that are making misuse of the land or outside of the perimeters where they are functioning? This is a perfect example. In Colby, across from the gas station, heading into Orange Grove, here we have vehicles parking at the curb. This is a traffic hazard. Through you, Madam Chair. And Madam Chair passes it every day. She sees it as well.
Experience it as well.
Going further, and this is a reoccurring thing, and this is from the garage on the opposite end of the road. And this is not, I'm not pointing out this garage in particular. A lot of garages does it. So I would like to know, Minister, what is the plan through you, Madam Chair, to crack down on this illegal use of land, as well, look here, the whole Orange Grove cordoned off as if it's a car show. You can see it? Oh, you got your glasses too? Okay. No problem. I'll give it to you when I'm done. Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, MP Kota.
Since you want a nod of the head?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. See, we're here looking out for one another. That's good. But yes, so I would like to know also to the Minister of Justice, because I think this is also a justice matter, what is going to be done as it pertains to these type of situations. Because I know, I understand. Take your time. We have the time to wait for the answers. But what is going to be done about this situation? As well, to the Minister of Justice, through you, Madam Chair, we often speak of the, last one. Look, this is a traffic hazard. Because we're talking about road beautification, tongue beautification, Phillipsburg beautification. But if we beautify the sidewalks and we fix the sidewalks and we spend money on these sidewalks and cars park on them, what are we doing? You're spending money to have to spend it again. So what are we doing to fix these problems before we just spend money again? Minister of Justice, through you, Madam Chair, there's a cry when it comes to illegal taxis, etc., and gypsies across from the harbor. I understand from some local police officers that they don't have the necessary legislation needed to do these necessary crackdowns on the gypsies and the illegal taxi drivers. Can you look into that, through Madam Chair, to see what can be done legislative-wise to give the police the oomph to want to do what they have to do and not that they're wasting their time? Minister of Romy, good thing that you're back, because of Romy, as I was going through all the ministries separately, this is just for you. Right? So for my favorite minister of Romy, the following. Minister Patrice Thierry Gomes. What are your plans to revitalize the Housing Foundation? Both as it pertains to the debts that they have and the current situation, because also can you give some explanation on that as it pertains to the director and the head of the board?
MP York,
yes.
Just to help you to follow the process of speaking through the chair, maybe if you refer to a minister in the third person and you speak through me to the Minister of Romy, but not you and you, Minister.
Oh,
then
yes.
If you
100% correct. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the correction.
You're welcome, sir.
So through you, Madam Chair, I would like to know what, seeing that we had heavy rainfalls over the last couple of months and years, we can contribute that to climate change. And climate change is something that is affecting us all over the world, and in particular, St. Maarten. And when I say affecting us, it affects us in unforeseen ways because we can't, up to now, we couldn't plan for something that we didn't see coming, right? So everything I'm about to ask, Minister, it is not your fault. The question is, what are you going to do about it? So, Minister, with that being said, given the increased rainfall and climate change, currently our drainage system, as I would say, on St. Maarten, the max that they can handle, through you, Madam Chair, is 210 milliliters of water. The most recent rainfall was about 300, a little bit over 300 milliliters due to climate change. When these drainage and these trenches, etc., were made, it was made with a projection of 10, 15, 20, 40, 50, 100 years. But that was before taking into account climate change. So I would like to know what are the plans of the minister as it pertains to the drainage issue and climate change. Because it's not like we can go and just dig up every drain we have and put on a new one. That's not feasible. So what is the plan and the vision moving forward as it pertains to increasing the max capacity of our drains, and also upgrading of our current drainage system? Also, I would like to know, I see a lot of articles from the minister through you, Madam Chair, of the ministers talking about comprehensive updates of the ministry, and through his presentation, different and various plans and ideas, what he wants to execute, what the minister wants to execute in 2025. But what I'm missing is a comprehensive ministry plan. And seeing as January, I think it's due right now, or in the first quarter of the year. So I would like to have or know what is the ministry plan and the report, if I can receive that from the minister once it's done, and if it's not done yet, has it started, and when will it be finished? Because I know it has to come from your SG. So what is and what will be the ministry plan moving forward? Also, I see here another article from the minister where he speaks on UNOP support to address traffic congestion. What is the scope of this report? And if we're asking a third party for a report, that report is going to take long because it's going to be extensive, which we're paying for it, right? So in that period of time, what is the minister's, through you, Madam Chair, vision and plan to address this scenario? Because I don't want to think we got to sit down a whole year, wait on a report, and nothing is going to be done in the meantime. You're there now. What is the plan? And what is the plan in particular as it pertains to the cul-de-sac basin? What is the plan for the traffic from South Reward straight down to Bush Road? What is the plan in short-term, mid-term, and long-term plans? Because the minister often speaks on evidence-based decision-making. I'm seeing decisions made, and I'm curious to where the evidence is coming from, besides what we see. What's the data on paper? So I would like to know what the minister is doing about that, and are we paying for this UNOPS report? Because I don't know, maybe it's something that's being given, that's on May request, but if we're paying, how much are we paying? I asked the minister during the CC, through you, Madam Chair, for the top 3 priorities heading into 2025, what he wants to achieve. And on that was zoning, housing, and drainage. I didn't see much about housing in his presentation, so if he can elaborate on that in the second round. Basically, what the vision for it is, where is the money coming from, and what time-based. I'm seeing a lot of plans, I'm not seeing anything with time. I know time is not definite, but what are the tentative dates for these things? Because if I'm homeless and I hear the minister is going to build houses, I would like to know when these houses are going to be built. As well, talking about drainage. Drainage is associated to flooding. And I don't see anything about erosion on the minister's to-do list. And actually, in my humble opinion, even if you take into account roads, you take into account zoning, even though I brought a plan for zoning, not a plan, a motion for zoning, I think seeing what is currently happening in the hills, in our hills, is of more importance than anything, or any priority, or any of those CapEx plans that the minister has right now. Because, Minister, I brought something with me. I feel like I was doing some handicraft in preparation for the budget. I don't know if this looks familiar. What we see here is the dot side. This is the dot side, right? I added some colors. In blue is our inner waters, the Simpson Bay Lagoon, the Great Salt Pond, Fresh Pond. What you see in brown is our low-lying areas known as flatland. And what we see in green, and everything associated with green, is everything that falls under the hillside policy. So in dark green, you see the hilltops where you're legally not allowed to build. And in the patterned green areas, that's where all the hillside development is happening. Now, the reason why I printed this out, because when we speak about the hills and the hillside policy, we gloss over it. Because often when you hear the minister speak, he speaks on drainage, sloping of roads, etc. But that does not fix the drainage and water problem that we have on the island. It doesn't. Because if you had to extrapolate this, 60% of the entire buildable area on the island falls under the hillside policy. And why am I stressing on this? Because we have a building code, a building ordinance to build a house, which is perfect for the flat. But the majority of our buildable area has a mere policy, and not an ordinance. And to give an idea, for example, in the dark green areas, that's a space where you're legally not allowed to build. So up to 150 meters you can build. Over that, you can't build. But developers with money has taken government to court in the past, and they could go all up to 200 plus meters. Why? Because a policy is a directive and it's not a regulation. So it never holds up in court. But nowhere in the presentation did I see a priority for the hillside policy. Furthermore, I alluded to erosion. Right now, in the cul-de-sac basin, we have many scenarios and many examples, and I know the minister knows of them, through you, Madam Chair, where erosion is happening, where illegal excavation is happening, where right now, I don't think the ministry has a grip on what's going on as it pertains to excavation in the hills. Because if I excavate in the wrong manner next to, let's say, PM's house, if he has one in the hill, that for 30 years had no issues, because of somebody who just came yesterday and excavated next to me, I have structural issues moving forward. But in the legislation that we have nothing to protect that person or to impede the other from doing such. People just does what they want nowadays and says, oh, from me they didn't see it, oh, it done happen. If you look at Illich Road, a major excavation is currently happening in the hill. And what they do, they excavate, they put the dirt behind the excavated area, and what that does, when time comes and the rain comes down, it makes a mudslide. But when the mudslide comes, we act shocked. But what are we doing in the current scenario to make sure these things don't happen and keep happening moving forward? The cul-de-sac basin. We always say, in order to know where we're going, we got to know where we're coming from. That's a famous quote from a wise MP here in the room. I heard the minister made note to you, Madam Chair, of various studies going to be done, as it pertains to acrobatics, etc., when it comes to erosion, when it comes to water issues in the hills. But oftentimes, I feel we are trying to reinvent the wheel, because what does the ministry currently have? Or does the ministry currently have any reports in the past, whether it be 10 years, 15 years ago, of these problems? Because if I take off my MP hat and put on my engineering hat, when we look at major projects like Indigo Bay, we look at Waymont Hill, we look at Rice Hill, we look at Valley Estate, these are major developments that happened under the hillside policy. Meaning as well, in order to do the necessary excavation and get the necessary permits, extensive economical and water-related studies had to be done. If I go even further, as it pertains to water, I would like to ask the minister, has the minister ever looked into the natural waterways in the Cul-de-Sac Basin and how we can retrieve and catch the water before it hits the flat land? Because if we're looking at all ways and to slope road and do this and do that on the flat, and we're not dealing with the hill, everything we're doing on the flat is superfluous. So has the minister thought about maybe putting a tank on different positions in the hills to catch the water from the various waterways to mitigate the water coming down on the flat? Take it even further. Minister, I just named a couple of these projects, and I'm sure the environmental and water plans for these projects that had to be submitted potentially before them, somewhere in these projects has a hydrological plan, graphs, tables, data to assist you with your data-driven decision-making. Because I hear a lot about decisions being made, but not about where the data is coming from. Because with these hydraulic and hydrological plans and visuals, most likely, if they are available, these things that we're speaking about has already been researched. You'll see exactly where the waterways are. You see exactly how does the waterways how they are attached to the current channels that we have. And if the persons did the job well, you'll even see projections of how long or over what time span of risk these channels can handle the growth of the water and flooding issues. You'll see, for example, different channels saying, hey, this channel has a risk of flooding 1 in every 5 years, a risk of 1 every 10 years, risk of 1 every 100 years. And my question is, if you can get that information, how is that extrapolated if you add climate change to that? Because then you will see that certain areas need attention and certain areas maybe that you're looking don't need the attention. So seeing that we don't have as much manpower, I think we should move more efficiently. So the question is, does the ministry have any hydraulic or hydrological plans from any of these areas, in particular the Cul-de-Sac Basin? The Cul-de-Sac Basin. Because we're talking about flooding, we're talking about traffic congestion, and I would like to know what are the immediate plans for the traffic congestion in that area, because I'm hearing left, right, and center about plans. I would like to know what are these plans. Also, flood mitigation measures. What do we have? Because I'm sure the residents of the Cul-de-Sac Basin, in particular Mary Fancy, Saunders, Valley Estate, South Reward, they're waiting to hear from their minister, through Madam Chair, what he's doing for them. Because there are various scenarios in the hills right now that legislation we don't have. If I was to ask the minister, right now, if I'm in the hill, my backyard is the hill, and on top of that part, there's another house. Because of erosion, that house on the top maybe had 10 meters of front yard, and now they have 5. Because of erosion, that other house on the lower part, who maybe had 5 or 10 meters of backyard, now has none. Who's liable in that situation? Who's going to help those homeowners that find themselves in these situations? We have no legislation for those. And I understand you can't just go and make retaining walls for everybody. But the question is, what is the solution and what are the plans? I could take it even further. Right now, because of the undermining, there are certain homes that with the next rain or two could find themselves just sliding down the road. And that's another casualty. Loss of home, loss of life. What is the minister? I understand he waiting on acrobatics, but acrobatics could take another 6 months to a year. We could have loss of life in the meantime. So what are the immediate plans for the minister as it pertains to that? As well, I asked for the plans for climate change. What does the minister have for climate change? But what does he have for urbanization? What does he have for urbanization? Because concrete jungles in the hills, no problem. But what are we doing about it? The plans that the minister showed in his presentation for CAPEX 2025 are basically projects that roll over from the funds of CAPEX 2023. My question to the minister, why weren't these projects executed in 2024? Because the list is quite extensive, so I want to know why did all those projects roll over to 2025, and what are the plans, because I showed the minister is planning to invest, to request CAPEX 2025. What are the plans for the funds of 2025? Because this budget that we're talking about is not the end-all be-all, because the coalition has already said this is not what we're going to be working with, this is what we're starting with. And amendments are going to come. So if amendments are going to come, one of the amendments might be CAPEX 2025 funds. So I would like to know, before those funds come, what are the plans for these funds? Another question. Something that the minister, prior to entering the ministry, was very adamant about. Tender policy. I didn't see that in your presentation. This is something that some particular parties were very adamant about in the prior term, but now, almost a year into this term, I'm not seeing or hearing anything about the tender policy. Maybe they're working on it, I don't know. I'm not pointing any fingers, but I would like to know what is being done about it. And when is the policy going to turn into a law? And what are going to be the specifications of that? And speaking about tenders, I have an idea. Because currently, only a handful of contractors actually stand a chance to obtain certain projects from the government. I would like to know what the minister is doing, before I share my idea, to raise inclusion, I would say, of the smaller contractors, the small man contractors. And the idea I have is to have a separate little policy based on annual turnover. What does the minister think about that? So basically different categories. For example, if you have an annual turnover max of an average of 200K, then to 500K and 1 million and above, that you're able to apply for certain projects. So basically, if you're under 200K, somebody, a big boy from over $1 million, cannot apply for that project. That way, more contractors stand a chance to also grow their business. Now, I say all of this to say, overall, if I look at the plans, there's some cohesion, there's some synergy, but they're long. I'm missing the total picture when it comes to that. And when I ask questions, I'm getting various answers from various ministers, and they're not, sometimes they don't add up. And at the end of the day, it all falls back, although it might not be fair, but that's just the nature of the game. It falls back on you, Prime Minister. Because at the end of the day, it's your Council of Ministers, and at the end of the day, it's named the Messelina Cabinet too. Not the Helliger, not the Taklin, not the Brug, not the Gums Cabinet. The name is the Messelina Cabinet too. Because at the end of the day, I look at body language, right? And when I ask certain ministers, if I just use an example, government-owned companies, stakeholder reps. If I ask Minister A and B, they said, MP, this is what I think about it. This is how I think, this is how it is now, and this is how I think it should be. When I asked you the question, and Minister, through you, Madam Chair, you're very You're a proud man. You speak with your chest. You always speak with your head up. That was the first time you did this. And you didn't really answer my question through you, Madam Chair. I see Madam Chair, she watching me, she upset, but I understand. I won't say you anymore. It goes automatic. So, Prime Minister, I saw that the Prime Minister was a bit uncomfortable, and I think the answer that the Prime Minister gave was more that of trying to, I wouldn't say please, I would say more trying to keep everybody happy. Don't want to get anybody upset. But I will say this, Prime Minister, at the end of the day, your vision is what should be the main vision. And all the plans should stem from one vision. Because if you don't do that, if the Prime Minister doesn't do that, they would have different islands, and you will see, the Prime Minister will see after 4 years that everybody was working in their own thing, and the island was not moving forward because they weren't working as a team. And although it may be certain plans and certain projects, you do see the synergy, overall, the vision isn't there, Prime Minister. And at the end of the day, the Prime Minister can keep trying to please everyone in his cabinet, but in 3 years from now, close to the next election, what's going to happen? The same people you're trying to please going to do this, and it's going to be all your fault. Recent history will show that is a reoccurring thing. So, Prime Minister, I would say, if you're going to be judged on something, if the Prime Minister is going to be judged on something in 4 years, let that be his vision, and not that of others that, at the end of the day, are going to end up blaming the Prime Minister for. So, I would say this as advice, not as critique. At the end of the day, there are 3 groups of people that the Prime Minister has to lead. And it's not just the people outside. Before that, you have 2 groups. One you were already doing before you came in here. That's your family at home. The second group, your Council of Ministers. And if you can't lead your Council of Ministers, Prime Minister, you cannot lead the people outside there. And I'm not saying you're not doing that. I'm just saying, bear in mind you have to lead this group before you can lead the group outside. Through you, Madam Chair. That's just advice I would like to impart to the Prime Minister. And in closing, there are a couple questions. I'm going to go quick through them. I'm not going to go back and forth with the Prime Minister about NRPB anymore. I spoke my piece, and I will see what comes out of it. But I will say this, and I'll say this to the Minister of VSR. What I am alarming about, what I am warning about, is the effect that a move such as this can have on the construction labor market. And people can swipe back to the side, Prime Minister can swipe back to the side, it's okay. But at the end of the day, Minister, you're the Minister of Labor. And if the labor market crashes, if the construction labor market crashes, people are not going to blame the Prime Minister. They're going to blame you, the Minister of Labor. So in closing, I would like to ask the Prime Minister the following questions as it pertains to the mental health institution that's going to be built, that's prone to be built. Is there a technical report ready? And if so, when are the contracts for this mental health institute going to be signed? I ask this because there have been a history of repeated delays in NRPB projects, and seeing that the deadline for the grant agreement will expire for the Mental Health Institute in June 2027, it is imperative that steps, seeing that we're in 2025, be taken from now to make sure that doesn't happen. Because if that happens, money will have to be taken from ulterior sources, and that could come in the form of having to touch the disaster risk fund, something that I know a lot of people do not want to happen. So what is the timeline for the Mental Health Institute? Also, why has the library not been demolished? And I also would like to know from the Prime Minister, what has the lessons learned of working with the NRPB over the last couple of years? And I don't mean it in a negative sense, right? It's just moving forward. Let's say they have another calamity and we have NRPB 2.0. God forbid that comes. what are the lessons that we learned this time? What are we taking into the next time? Because optimization, no matter good or bad, is always welcomed. And last question, last two questions. Keep it short, Madam Chair, through you. GB relief, what's going on? And the loan that was taken for the GB project, not GB project, for the generators. What were the exact conditions, and are the documents readily available for Parliament to peruse, whether confidential or not? And with that, I would like to thank Madam Chair for your indulgence, and that will be all for this round. Thank you.
Thank you, MP York, for your contribution to the discussion on the draft budget 2025. I see MP Otley at the desk and signing to speak.